you want to read trashy romance novels, it does not make you a dumb person.
It's about books, duh.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Paige, and today we're going to talk about some of my favorite books. Now, there's a little caveat to this. I chose some of my favorite books that I have as a physical copy in my library currently. There are so many favorites that I just don't own because I've lent them to people or I just don't own them. This video is going to be talking about 5 of my old favorites. So old favorites, we're talking like 5+ years ago. Okay, we're talking 2019 and previous. All right, so very different version of me as a reader. And we're also going to be talking about 5 newer favorites that are more current reads that I've read recently and reflect more of my reading tastes now. If you've watched any of my videos previously, you know that I used to love a sad girl book, okay? 2019 me, we were deeply heartbroken. We were in the depths of finding ourselves all over again. And, you know, I wanted some comfort back then by knowing that there are characters out there in books that have it worse than me. Sometimes you just need that. Okay, the first book is also a current favorite, but I did read it a while ago and I've actually read it multiple times, and that is Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. I don't even know how to say his name. Call Me By Your Name is heartbreaking. It is about love. It is about unrequited love, and also like some type of like unattainable love that you thought you had a grasp on, but now it's like so fleeting and gone. I watched the movie first and I did read the book after I watched the movie. This is one of the only books I've done that with, and I've actually enjoyed doing that. This book wrecked me. The movie doubly wrecked me, but reading it, especially from Elio's perspective, everyone has felt the way that he has felt before, and it's just fucking awful. But it's such a beautiful story about like finding someone and like even just appreciating the love that you had as it lasted, even if it didn't last a long time. I actually have a quote from this book tattooed on me, and that is, "But to feel nothing so as not to feel anything, what a waste." And I think that sums up the time of my life in which I read this. Was like I was feeling all the shitty feelings, but I kept having to remind myself, you know what? It would be a waste if I didn't feel any of this. And I know something good is gonna come of this. I'm getting really, literally teary-eyed right now thinking about it. So Call Me By Your Name, old favorite, but I still love this book. I had so much fun finding these old favorites on my shelf. Another one of my older favorites is Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King. So when this came out, gosh, what year was that? This came out in 2014, and I do believe that I read it as a new release. And as a Stephen King stan and a fan, and my mom loves Stephen King, I was like, yes, sign me up. You know, such an iconic trilogy now. Mr. Mercedes is the first book in the series, and it kind of made me fall in love with Stephen King's writing again. And it was just like a fast-paced, scary-ass book that had you guessing and not knowing what the hell is going on at all. If you have not read this series, I highly recommend it. It is so bingeable and so good, and Bill Hodges is just such a lovable, grumpy character. You'll love him. I think this is what inspired me to get back into Stephen King. So Mr. Mercedes, another old favorite. So another thing that I really liked to do in my sad girl reading era was read poetry, and I have tons of poetry on my shelf, and I still do enjoy that, but I feel like reading poetry is always, you have to be in a certain mood. So one of my favorite books of poetry is called Her. I literally can't read script. Pierre Alex Jeanty. I think I randomly found this on Amazon, but this is a collection of poems about the female experience, and as a person reading this who was kind of going through some heartbreak and a lot of changes in her life, this was like very comforting for me to read. Hank doesn't agree. For once, Hank is in the video. Let me hold on. This is what we're dealing with on a daily basis, so just don't mind this monstrosity. Okay, anyway. Her is a collection of poems kind of about what it's like to be a woman. I still would highly recommend this, even if you're not in the sad girl mood. You know, reading poetry is very cathartic sometimes, and sometimes things come up while you're reading poetry and you're like, wow, that was so well said. I don't think I could ever articulate my thoughts about that topic better than this poem. So Her is another old favorite. Another thing that I really like to read back in the day was books about teaching and teaching pedagogy. So I am a teacher. I teach students in kindergarten through second grade who have special needs. And currently I'm working in a self-contained classroom. So my students are with me all day. There's 3 of them. We have a grand old time. There's a lot going on. We just are loving life. I've definitely fallen out of reading about teaching currently, but when I was reading a lot about teaching, The Book Whisperer by Donalyn Miller was one of my favorite books. So if you haven't read this as a teacher, I feel like that's kind of crazy, especially if you're like a lower elementary or even mid-elementary teacher. This is a book about how to make kids fall in love with reading, which I think is a fantastic thing to write about and a fantastic thing to read about. As a kid, my parents would read to us every single night at bedtime. It was a cherished time. We loved taking trips to the library, and my parents really fostered a love of books in all of us at a very early age. And it's funny because every time I talk about Stephen King, I think about how my mom would read Stephen King novels when she was pregnant with me. And I feel like it just went into my veins even as an unborn child. This is a really good book with practical advice if you are looking for something to help like get inspired about teaching reading. When this came out, this was kind of revolutionary, some of the advice that they were giving, like let kids read about things they like. Mind-blowing, right? Create a comfy space for kids to read in school. Hello. As booktubers, we understand the importance of having a comfortable reading area and reading only what you want to read. I'm so fucking tired of people feeling like they should read things because it's the cool thing to do, or they'll look smart, or they'll look whatever way. Just read what you want. And you know what? When I was reading all of these old favorites, I was that person. I have classics on my shelf because I thought I wanted to be smarter and read classics, and I started trying to read them and I realized I don't understand them and I don't like them. So I stopped trying to read classics. And there's so many things like that out there that like I just need people to understand. If you want to read trashy romance novels, it does not make you a dumb person. It just makes you a person who likes trashy romance novels. Like what is the problem? So please read what you like and take Donalyn Miller's advice. Okay, finally, the last of my old favorites. Normal People. I'm actually getting teary thinking about this book because this is such a brutal, honest telling of what it's like to navigate the world of loving another person. What it can be like, of course. Now, when I was reading this, again, this was 2018 that I read this, I was going through it. Everything that I thought my life was going to be literally took a left turn. And I was like, oh my God, I'm lost. What am I going to do? Who am I? What is happening? This was really comforting for me in that time because you know what? These people have it worse. These people have it worse, friends, okay? Sometimes the characters in the books make you feel better about what you're going through because it could get worse. If you don't know about this book, it's not my job to tell you about it because literally it's everywhere. Also, the television show is unreal and so good. So I would highly recommend watching that. But Normal People is honestly still one of my favorites. I am still wanting to get tattooed the image that is on the UK cover, which is the 2 people inside the sardine can. Love that. I will get that tattooed on my body at some point in my life. I've read this one a couple times too. And if you know me, there are 3 books in this stack that I have reread, which is absolutely unreal because I do not reread books because it's just not something that I like to do. But I have reread 3 out of the 5 of these books. So that just tells you a lot about some of my old favorites. Okay, now we are going to move on to some of my new favorites. So these are books that I've rated 5 stars or close to it and have read more recently, so in the past 5 years. I would say most of these books I've read in the past 2 years. So let's get into it. Okay, Call Me a Basic Bitch, I Don't Care, Fourth Wing, and Iron Flame. Are these books perfect? No. Are they so good? Yes. Why do you think so many people freaking like them? This is something I would never have picked up 5 years ago. I was not a fantasy reader. I don't consider myself a fantasy reader now, but romantasy, yes, yes, queen, please. A dragon that talks and is so sarcastic, yes. Trials that mimic American Ninja Warrior, maybe not. But these are so good and so entertaining, and it made me appreciate really just reading a book to have a really good time. So another book that I consider a new favorite is You Again by Kate Goldbeck. And this is just so cozy and good. I had never read a romance book with this kind of arc of the characters where they continuously meet over and over and over again across the course of many years. I did not think that I would be a person that would like that kind of book, but this really was so beautifully done, and I loved how flawed the characters were. They just couldn't fucking figure it out until they did, and then they didn't, and then maybe they did, and you were really invested in this story. This was a very well written book. So if you haven't read this is a really good one for this time of year as we go into like fall and then into winter. And especially if you like a New York City setting and an Adam Driver-esque MMC, please read You Again. Okay, so I did include a nonfiction pick in this stack because I wanted to give a little bit of range and not just do all fiction. So one of my new favorites in the genre of nonfiction, which I don't read a lot of anymore because it just hurts my brain, but this is You Don't Have to Say You Love Me by Sherman Alexie. So if you don't know, Sherman Alexie is a Native writer. He typically writes YA books with Native characters and themes around Native issues like substance abuse, pregnancy, reservation life, schools that are really not too great on the res, things like that. So this book is his memoir, and it is a lot about his relationship with his mom. I don't remember a lot of specifics from this book, but I do remember just this being like one long, beautiful poem that he wrote, because his writing is so incredible and just so like it pulls you in. It makes you think about things that maybe you wouldn't have thought about before. And I love this commentary on the relationship with his mother, because most of us love our moms and we look up to our moms, especially as kids. And then as we become adults, maybe people start looking at things a little bit differently. And I think for Sherman Alexie, there was a lot of that. And if you're hesitant to read nonfiction and you're wanting to, this is a really good option because it's such a narrative way to write a memoir. I know that memoirs obviously are a narrative of someone's life, but sometimes it can feel really like a timeline, and you're just like, okay, there's nothing compelling about this. This is a very compelling memoir. So this is one of my newer favorites. I think I read this in 2018 or 2019. So put it on your TBR. So the second to last book, you've heard me yap about it. You've heard everybody yap about it, and there's a reason for that. And that is Heartless by Elsie Silver. So this kind of goes with like my core wanting to be wrecked by a book and like wanting to cry and wanting to have an emotional reaction from things that I watch and read and consume, but in such a like heartfelt and like happy way, because there's a happy ending. And I'm sorry, a cowboy romance, I did not think I was this girly. I did not think I was going to be head over heels in love with a man who works on a ranch, but here we are. This is crack. Honestly, it's been too long since I've read an Elsie Silver book. I need to read Powerless because I'm needing the fix. Come on, Hinky boy. Come up and say hi to your fans. It's so funny because I film when he's sleeping because he's just a nightmare. So Heartless is definitely a new all-time favorite. I will not stop talking about this book because it just made me feel all the things and I loved it, okay? Okay, finally, our last two books on my list of new favorites are Ninth House and Hellbent, okay? This is a perfect example of how much my taste has changed. Again, these are fantasy / dark academia, okay? Your girl would not be picking these up back in the day. Why? I don't know. I think I didn't think that I would like them or that this would be my thing, but this is most definitely my thing. Make no mistakes. I have the special edition copies of these from Barnes & Noble. Like I'm committed. The characters, I think what I just really like is like a flawed character. I think all of my books that I have here in this stack are just really flawed characters because you know what? Everybody in this effing world is flawed. And maybe that's what I relate to. And I feel like I'm not perfect and this makes me feel better about that. If you have not read these and you want dark academia and you want ghosts and you want creatures, secret societies, love, hell, demons, pick these up. Honestly, Hellbent is one of my all-time favorites at this point. I read these books last year. I actually think I'm gonna need to reread them before the next book comes out because your girl doesn't remember much from details, important details that would need to be known for the next book. So Hellbent and Ninth House, incredible, love them. Okay, friends, so those are 5 old favorites and 5 new favorites. I kind of give you a little bit of a taste of how my life as a reader has changed in the last 5 to 10 years, okay? So I hope that this video encourages you to read some things that maybe you thought weren't for you, or you know what, to continue reading what you like, because that's what we're here to do. As much as I like to yap about what I think you should read, I think you should read what you want to read, okay? And I'm gonna read what I want to read, so don't tell me what to do. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time.